Hello again, dreamer. Get comfy. Let the world fade away. Tonight, we travel to a forest that remembers every dream ever dreamed. Let's begin. In the dimly lit corner of Professor Eleanor Whitmore's study, where ancient tomes and dusty manuscripts competed for space on every available surface, a peculiar mystery was about to unfold. The professor, renowned for her groundbreaking research in folklore and cultural anthropology, had spent 3 decades unraveling humanity's most enduring traditions. Yet tonight, as she sat hunched over her oak writing desk, a family heirloom dating back to the late 1700s, a seemingly simple question had begun to consume her thoughts. Why do we knock on wood? The evening had started innocently enough with a phone call from her grandson, Thomas, who had just turned 8. Grandma, he'd asked during their weekly conversation, why do people tap on tables when they're talking about good luck? The question, though childlike in its phrasing, struck Eleanor with unexpected force. She realized that despite her extensive knowledge of cultural practices, she couldn't provide a satisfactory answer. The conventional wisdom, something about warding off evil spirits or preventing bad luck, felt inadequate. Almost dismissive, as the grandfather clock in the hallway chimed midnight, Eleanor found herself tracing her fingers over the intricate carvings of her desk, when she absent-mindedly knocked on its surface while contemplating an upcoming lecture. A curious thought occurred to her. This gesture, so deeply ingrained in human behavior across countless cultures, must have roots far deeper than modern superstition suggested. Perhaps it wasn't merely about avoiding misfortune. Maybe it represented something fundamental about humanity's relationship with the natural world. Her mind began racing through historical references, literary allusions, and anthropological studies she'd encountered over the years. There was the ancient Celtic practice of touching trees to communicate with spirits, the Norse tradition of wooden rune staves, and even biblical references to knocking in doors. Each culture seemed to have its own variation, yet they all shared this common thread of interacting with wood as if it held some special power or significance. Eleanor reached for her favorite leather-bound notebook, its pages already filled with decades of observations and theories. As she jotted down initial thoughts, she noticed something peculiar about her own behavior. Every time she wrote down a potentially groundbreaking idea, her knuckles instinctively sought the solid reassurance of her wooden desk. It was as if the act itself validated her thoughts, transforming abstract concepts into tangible possibilities. The more she considered it, the more she realized how ubiquitous this practice was. From boardroom tables where executives tapped for successful deals, to children's rhymes about knocking on wood, the gesture transcended age, class, and geography. What other human action could claim such universal recognition? Even in this digital age, where virtual interactions dominated daily life, people still found themselves drawn to physical contact with wood when seeking good fortune or expressing hope. As dawn approached, Eleanor made a decision that would shape the next phase of her academic career. She would dedicate herself to uncovering the true origins and meaning behind this seemingly simple act. Little did she know that this investigation would lead her down a path connecting ancient civilizations, forgotten rituals, and profound insights into human psychology, revelations that would challenge everything she thought she knew about cultural evolution and our relationship with the natural world. The professor's hand hovered over her desk, poised to knock once more, as she whispered to herself, if wood could talk, what secrets would it reveal? The journey ahead promised to be anything but boring, transforming what appeared to be a trivial superstition into a window into humanity's collective consciousness. To understand the roots of our wooden ritual, Eleanor embarked on a meticulous journey through humanity's earliest recorded history. Her investigation began in the mist-shrouded forests of northern Europe, where ancient Celtic tribes developed complex relationships with their arboreal surrounding. The Celts believed that trees were living conduits between the mortal realm and the spirit world, with each species possessing unique properties and personalities. Oak trees, in particular, were revered as sacred vessels of divine energy, and tribal elders would often place their hands against the rough bark while reciting prayers or making important declarations. These ancient Celts developed elaborate ceremonies known as tree-tapping rituals, where community members would gently strike designated trees with their palms or small wooden mallets. Archaeological evidence suggests these practices served multiple purposes, invoking protection from malevolent forces, sealing vows and agreements, and establishing spiritual connections with nature deities. Intriguingly, many of these rituals required participants to accompany their knocks with specific verbal formulas, not unlike modern phrases like knock on wood or touch wood. Simultaneously, across the Mediterranean, the Greeks were developing their own sophisticated understanding of wood's mystical properties. In the Oracle of Dodona, one of Greece's oldest sanctuaries dedicated to Zeus, priests interpreted divine will by listening to the rustling of sacred oak leaves and the sounds produced when wooden branches were deliberately struck together. These practices evolved into formalized divination techniques, where the pattern and resonance of knocks carried prophetic significance. Greek literature frequently references characters seeking guidance by interacting with wooden objects, suggesting that the association between knocking on wood and invoking divine favor was deeply embedded in classical culture. Meanwhile, in the vast empires of Asia, similar beliefs about wood's spiritual power emerged independently. Chinese Taoist traditions emphasized the concept of mu qi, wood energy, viewing trees as vital links in the cosmic flow of qi. Historical records indicate that during the Han Dynasty, imperial advisors would ritually tap on wooden panels before presenting proposals to the emperor, believing this action harmonized their intentions with natural forces. Japanese Shinto practices similarly incorporated tree-touching ceremonies, where worshippers would pat or knock on sacred trees called shinboku to awaken sleeping kami spirits. Perhaps most fascinating were the striking parallels between these disparate ancient cultures. Despite vast geographical distances and minimal direct contact, societies worldwide seemed to converge on similar practices involving deliberate contact with wood. Norse mythology, for instance, described Yggdrasil, the world tree, whose trunk connected all realms of existence. Viking warriors reportedly touched ship timbers before battle, believing this action transferred the tree's strength and protection to their endeavors. Similarly, Native American tribes across North America developed their own versions of tree-tapping ceremonies, using rhythmic knocks to communicate with forest spirits or mark significant events. Eleanor's research revealed that these ancient practices weren't merely superstitious remnants, but sophisticated systems of belief that reflected humanity's attempts to comprehend and interact with the natural world. The consistency with which different civilizations attributed special powers to wood suggested a universal human intuition about trees' role as mediators between the physical and spiritual realms. Whether it was the Celts' sacred groves, the Greeks' oracle oaks, or the Chinese emperor's wooden panels, humans consistently sought connection through carefully prescribed interactions with wood. As Eleanor delved deeper into these ancient practices, she began recognizing patterns that extended beyond mere superstition. Many cultures associated wood with growth, stability, and resilience, qualities they hoped to invoke through their rituals. The act of knocking became a form of dialogue, a way of acknowledging wood's inherent power while simultaneously expressing human hopes and aspirations. This realization transformed what initially appeared as random acts of superstition into a complex tapestry of human spirituality and environmental consciousness spanning millennia. The similarities between these ancient practices and modern knocking on wood habits were undeniable. Each culture had developed its own variations, yet the core elements remained remarkably consistent: physical contact with wood, specific intentions or verbal accompaniments, and the belief that this combination influenced outcomes. What started as isolated observations began coalescing into a comprehensive picture of humanity's enduring relationship with wood, revealing that our contemporary gestures were but modern manifestations of ancient wisdom. As Christianity spread across Europe during the Middle Ages, the ancient practice of interacting with wood underwent significant transformation, weaving itself into the fabric of religious and folk traditions in ways both subtle and profound. The Church, recognizing the deep-rooted nature of these customs, adopted and adapted them rather than attempting complete eradication. This syncretism created a rich tapestry of beliefs that blended pagan practices with Christian theology, giving rise to new interpretations and applications of wood-based rituals. One of the most notable developments occurred within medieval monastic communities. Monks and nuns, while officially condemning pagan tree worship, nonetheless maintained certain practices involving wooden objects. The custom of touching or knocking on wooden pews during prayer services emerged as a compromise between ancient traditions and Christian orthodoxy. This practice, originally intended to demonstrate reverence for the natural materials used in church construction, gradually took on additional layers of meaning. Parishioners began associating the sound of their knuckles against aged oak with the knocking of the faithful at Heaven's Gate, creating a powerful metaphorical bridge between earthly actions and divine attention. The Crusades played an unexpected role in spreading and standardizing these practices across Europe. Returning soldiers brought back not only tales of distant lands but also refined versions of protective gestures learned from various cultures. The Islamic tradition of touching wood during prayer, particularly evident in the use of prayer beads and rosary-like devices, influenced European practices. This cross-cultural exchange resulted in the development of more formalized patterns of wood touching, including specific sequences and accompanying prayers that would later influence Western superstitions. Medieval guilds and craft organizations contributed significantly to the evolution of these customs. Woodworking guilds, in particular, developed elaborate initiation rites that involved ceremonial knocking on wooden workbenches or tools. These rituals served multiple purposes, demonstrating mastery of craft, invoking protection from workshop accidents, and maintaining a spiritual connection to the material they worked with daily. Over time, these professional practices spilled over into broader society, with merchants and artisans carrying these habits into their personal lives and homes. The Black Death and subsequent plagues further entrenched the practice of knocking on wood as a protective measure. As people desperately sought ways to ward off disease and death, they turned to familiar rituals, imbuing them with new significance. The sound of wood being struck came to represent the beating away of evil spirits or illness-carrying entities. Homeowners began incorporating specific wooden elements into their dwellings precisely for this purpose. Sturdy door frames, carved mantelpieces, and heavy furniture all provided convenient surfaces for performing protective knocks. Folk medicine practitioners, often working in parallel with official church doctrines, developed elaborate systems of healing that included wood-based rituals. Patients were instructed to touch specific types of wood at particular times of day while reciting prescribed prayers or incantations. These practices merged pre-Christian beliefs about trees' healing properties with Christian symbolism, creating hybrid traditions that persisted long after the original meanings had faded. The distinction between religious observance and folk superstition became increasingly blurred, with both clergy and lay people participating in similar wood-touching rituals for different reasons. The transition from oral tradition to written documentation during this period proved crucial in preserving and standardizing these practices. Illuminated manuscripts and early printed books began recording specific wood-related customs, often attributing them to saintly figures or legendary heroes. The story of Saint Joseph, the carpenter, gained particular prominence, with his association to woodworking tools leading to the development of numerous protective rituals involving wooden objects. Artisans began carving specific symbols into their work, creating designated areas for ritual touches or knocks that were believed to hold special power. Urbanization and the growth of market towns introduced new context for these practices. Tavern keepers installed heavy wooden bars across their doors, not only for security but also to provide patrons with a convenient surface for their traditional gestures. Market stalls featured prominent wooden supports that doubled as ritual surfaces, while town halls incorporated massive wooden tables specifically designed for public ceremonies and declarations. Each of these adaptations helped maintain the practice's relevance in changing social environments. By the late Middle Ages, the practice of knocking on wood had become so deeply integrated into daily life that it operated on multiple levels simultaneously. For some, it remained a conscious act of faith or superstition. For others, it had become an unconscious habit, performed automatically in moments of hope or anxiety. This dual nature ensured its survival through periods of religious reform and social upheaval, allowing it to emerge into the Renaissance era as a firmly established tradition, ready to adapt once again to new cultural contexts. As the 18th century dawned, bringing with it the Age of Enlightenment and the subsequent Industrial Revolution, the practice of knocking on wood faced unprecedented challenges and transformations. The rise of rationalism and scientific inquiry threatened to relegate this ancient tradition to the status of mere superstition. Philosophers like Voltaire and Diderot openly mocked such practices, dismissing them as relics of humanity's primitive past. Yet, paradoxically, this period of rapid technological advancement and urbanization saw the custom not only survive but evolve in fascinating ways. The mass production of wooden goods during the Industrial Revolution played a crucial role in preserving the tradition. As factories churned out affordable furniture, flooring, and building materials, wood became more accessible than ever before. This democratization of wood meant that even the burgeoning middle class could participate in a practice that had previously been largely confined to those who could afford substantial wooden furnishings. The Victorian era, in particular, witnessed an explosion of ornate wooden furniture, much of it featuring specially designed surfaces, perfect for ritualistic knocking. Railway expansion and increased mobility introduced new contexts for the practice. Train travelers, facing the uncertainties of this revolutionary mode of transportation, found comfort in knocking on wooden carriage walls or seat backs. The rhythmic clatter of train wheels against tracks seemed to echo ancient patterns of wood percussion, unconsciously reinforcing the connection between movement, travel, and protective rituals. Station masters' offices and waiting rooms became unofficial sanctuaries, where nervous passengers could perform their familiar gestures. The rise of organized sports and public entertainment venues created new opportunities for communal wood-knocking experiences. Theaters and music halls, with their elaborate wooden interiors, became spaces where audiences instinctively sought out railings and balustrades during dramatic moments. Sports arenas, particularly cricket and baseball fields with their wooden bats and stadium seating, naturally incorporated knocking gestures into the rhythm of gameplay and spectatorship. These public displays helped normalize the practice, making it appear less like arcane superstition and more like accepted social behavior. Scientific discoveries about wood's properties inadvertently lent credibility to the tradition. The emerging field of botany revealed wood's remarkable cellular structure and its role in carbon sequestration, while advances in acoustics demonstrated how different woods produce distinct resonances. These findings, though purely scientific in nature, resonated with ancient beliefs about wood's special qualities, creating an intellectual framework that allowed rational thinkers to engage with the practice without feeling entirely irrational. The temperance movement and other social reform campaigns of the 19th century found creative ways to incorporate wood knocking into their activities. Temperance halls and meeting rooms often featured prominently placed wooden lecterns or tables, providing focal points for ritual gestures during speeches and declarations. The act of knocking on wood became associated with sincerity and commitment, adding weight to public promises and resolutions. This institutional adoption helped legitimize the practice in mainstream society. Urban planning and architecture of the period contributed to the tradition's evolution. City planners, recognizing the psychological comfort provided by natural materials, incorporated extensive wood elements into public buildings. Banks, post offices, and government buildings featured impressive wooden counters and paneling, becoming unofficial ritual sites where citizens could perform their familiar gestures while conducting important business. The grand wooden doors of municipal buildings became particularly significant, with visitors instinctively reaching out to touch or knock as they entered or exited. Education systems, too, played an unexpected role in preserving the custom. Schoolrooms equipped with wooden desks and chairs became training grounds for future generations to learn and practice the tradition. Teachers, whether consciously or unconsciously, modeled the behavior during moments of uncertainty or hope, passing it along to their students. University lecture halls, with their polished wooden podiums and paneling, continued this educational lineage, ensuring that even the most scientifically minded individuals maintained a connection to the ancient practice. Perhaps most significantly, the period saw the emergence of pseudo-scientific explanations that bridged the gap between traditional beliefs and modern rationality. Popular science writers began proposing theories about wood's supposed ability to absorb negative energies or stabilize emotional states, drawing on emerging concepts from physics and psychology. While these explanations lacked scientific validity, they provided a framework that allowed educated individuals to engage with the tradition without abandoning their commitment to reason and progress. As the 19th century progressed, the practice of knocking on wood became increasingly normalized, shedding much of its mystical connotation while retaining its essential character. It evolved into a social lubricant, a way of navigating uncertainty in rapidly changing times, and a subtle acknowledgement of humanity's enduring connection to natural materials. Far from disappearing under the weight of industrial progress and scientific advancement, the tradition found new life in the very structures and institutions that seemed destined to render it obsolete. As Eleanor's research expanded beyond Western civilization, she uncovered a fascinating tapestry of wood-related rituals that spanned continents and cultures, each offering unique insights into humanity's universal relationship with timber. In Japan, the practice of kyo-tataku, knocking on wood, revealed a sophisticated system of symbolic gestures deeply intertwined with Shinto beliefs. Unlike Western variants, Japanese tradition specified precise rhythms and locations for knocking, with different temple woods believed to possess distinct spiritual properties. The ancient art of kodama, communicating with tree spirits, incorporated rhythmic knocking patterns that varied according to the season and the type of request being made. African cultures presented perhaps the most diverse array of wood-based traditions. Among the Dogon people of Mali, elaborate wooden masks served not only as ceremonial objects but also as conduits for ancestral communication through specific knocking patterns. The Zulu nation developed a complex system of ukuthwala, wood-tapping rituals that accompanied important life events, from births to marriages, each requiring a unique sequence of knocks on specific types of wood. South African sangomas traditional healers used rhythmic wood percussion during divination sessions, interpreting the resulting patterns much like ancient Greek oracles had done centuries earlier. Native American tribes across the Americas maintained their own distinctive approaches to interacting with wood. The Hopi people's Kachina ceremonies featured intricate wooden dolls that were ritually tapped during dances and prayers. Lakota Sioux warriors developed a practice of touching their bows or spear shafts while making warrior oaths, believing this action bound their intentions to the wood's strength. In the Pacific Northwest, totem pole carvers incorporated specific knocking rituals into their work, believing that each strike awakened the spirit of the tree and invited it to participate in the creation of the artwork. Eleanor's comparative analysis revealed that regions with higher forest density tended to develop more elaborate wood-based rituals, while arid regions often reserved their wood interactions for the most significant occasions. Coastal communities frequently incorporated maritime wood into their practices, while mountainous regions favored specific tree species native to their elevations. These patterns suggested that environmental factors played a crucial role in shaping the specifics of wood-related traditions, even as the fundamental human impulse remained consistent across cultures. Professor Whitmore's investigation into the psychological underpinnings of wood knocking revealed startling connections between ancient practices and modern human behavior. Neuroscientific research conducted at Cambridge University's Cognitive Anthropology Department demonstrated that the act of knocking on wood triggers a complex cascade of neurological responses. Functional MRI scans showed that the combination of tactile stimulation and auditory feedback activated both the somatosensory cortex and the limbic system, creating a unique neural signature that researchers termed the wood interaction response. Clinical psychologists specializing in anxiety disorders discovered that patients who incorporated regular wood-touching rituals into their coping strategies exhibited measurably lower cortisol levels during stressful situations. Dr. Sarah Chen's groundbreaking study at Stanford's Behavioral Health Center revealed that the physical act of knocking on wood could serve as a powerful grounding technique, helping individuals anchor themselves in the present moment while processing uncertain outcomes. This finding provided a scientific basis for what ancient cultures had intuitively understood. Wood interaction functions as a potent psychological tool for managing anxiety and uncertainty. Cognitive scientists at MIT's Media Lab developed sophisticated algorithms to analyze the temporal patterns of wood-knocking gestures across different cultures. Their research uncovered universal mathematical ratios in the timing and rhythm of these gestures, suggesting that the practice might tap into fundamental aspects of human cognitive processing. The discovery of what they termed wood rhythm constants, WRCs, demonstrated that certain knocking patterns consistently correlated with improved focus, enhanced memory recall, and increased feelings of control over external circumstances. Social psychologists studying group dynamics observed that wood-knocking rituals served as powerful social bonding mechanisms. Experiments conducted at the Max Planck Institute for Human Development revealed that groups engaging in synchronized wood interaction activities demonstrated significantly higher levels of cooperation and trust compared to control groups. The researchers hypothesized that the shared experience of interacting with wood created a psychological common ground that facilitated interpersonal connection and collective problem solving. Environmental psychologists at the University of British Columbia's Nature and Wellbeing Lab documented what they called the wood effect, a measurable increase in positive affect and reduced physiological stress markers when individuals engaged in structured wood interaction activities. Their longitudinal studies showed that regular exposure to wood-based rituals could lead to lasting improvements in mental health metrics, including reduced symptoms of depression and anxiety. The researchers proposed that wood's natural texture and resonance might stimulate specific neural pathways associated with feelings of safety and security. Behavioral economists at the London School of Economics conducted controlled experiments examining the impact of wood knocking on decision-making processes. Their findings indicated that individuals who performed wood-touching rituals before making financial choices demonstrated greater risk awareness and more balanced decision-making compared to those who didn't. The researchers suggested that the ritual might help activate the brain's executive function networks, leading to more deliberate and considered choices. Developmental psychologists studying childhood behavior noted that children naturally gravitated toward wood interaction activities, often inventing their own versions of knocking games. Observational studies across multiple cultures revealed that these spontaneous rituals helped children develop important cognitive skills, including pattern recognition, temporal sequencing, and emotional regulation. The researchers proposed that wood knocking might represent a fundamental developmental milestone, similar to other universal childhood behaviors like peekaboo or hide and seek. Neuroanthropologists at Oxford University's Institute for Cognitive and Evolutionary Anthropology traced the evolutionary origins of wood interaction behaviors back to early hominid tool use. Their research suggested that the neural circuits involved in wood knocking might share common ancestry with those responsible for tool manipulation and environmental interaction. This discovery provided a biological basis for the universality of wood-based rituals, explaining why they persist across cultures and historical periods despite significant technological and social changes. Contemporary applications of these psychological insights have led to innovative approaches in various fields. Corporate training programs now incorporate structured wood interaction exercises to enhance team cohesion and creativity. Therapeutic settings utilize specialized wooden tools and surfaces designed to optimize the neurological benefits of wood contact. Educational institutions are experimenting with classroom designs that integrate intentional wood interaction opportunities to support student well-being and cognitive performance. The convergence of ancient wisdom and modern scientific understanding has transformed our appreciation of this seemingly simple gesture. What was once dismissed as mere superstition now stands revealed as a sophisticated psychological tool, honed by millennia of human experience and validated by cutting-edge research. The act of knocking on wood emerges not as a relic of primitive thinking, but as a testament to humanity's enduring capacity to develop practical solutions to fundamental psychological needs. As Eleanor Whitmore stood before the assembled scholars at the International Congress of Cultural Anthropology, her voice trembled not from nerves but from the weight of revelation pressing upon her. Months of relentless research had culminated in a breakthrough that would redefine our understanding of human consciousness and cultural evolution. The simple act of knocking on wood, she realized, wasn't merely a superstition or ritual. It represented something far more profound: humanity's intrinsic need to establish tangible connections with the universe's fundamental forces. Through her exhaustive cross-disciplinary analysis, Eleanor identified what she termed the wood resonance principle, the human brain's unique capacity to process the combination of tactile feedback and acoustic response from wood as a form of existential confirmation. This principle explained why ancient civilizations worldwide, despite lacking direct contact, converged on similar practices. The human nervous system, she discovers, responds to wood's specific cellular structure and density in ways that trigger primitive neural pathways associated with safety, stability, and connection to something greater than oneself. Her research revealed that wood's molecular composition creates a perfect medium for what physicists now call bioresonant harmony. When human skin contacts wood, especially during percussive actions like knocking, it generates micro-vibrations that align with natural human biofrequencies. This phenomenon, detectable through advanced spectrographic analysis, creates a temporary synchronization between human neurology and environmental energy fields. Ancient cultures, without scientific instruments, had intuitively recognized and ritualized this effect. developing practices that maximized its benefits. The implications extended far beyond mere cultural curiosity. Eleanor's findings suggested that humanity's relationship with wood represents a fundamental aspect of our evolutionary psychology. Early hominids, transitioning from arboreal to terrestrial existence, retained deep neurological connections to tree-based environments. The act of interacting with wood became encoded in our collective unconscious as a survival mechanism, a way of maintaining psychological equilibrium in changing environments. Modern humans, even in highly urbanized settings, continue to seek out these primal connections through seemingly mundane gestures. Perhaps most revolutionary was Eleanor's discovery of what she named temporal anchoring theory. Through extensive experimentation, she demonstrated that the act of knocking on wood creates a brief but measurable alteration in brainwave patterns, temporarily enhancing neural plasticity and cognitive flexibility. This effect explains why individuals throughout history have reported feeling more grounded and centered after performing the gesture during moments of uncertainty or transition. The sound and feel of wood responding to human touch serves as a biological reset button, helping to re-establish mental clarity and emotional balance. Eleanor's research also uncovered evidence of what she termed collective resonance fields, invisible but measurable energy patterns that form around frequently touched wooden objects in social settings. These fields, detectable through quantum coherence imaging, suggested that wood doesn't just respond to individual touches, but accumulates and amplifies human intention over time. This discovery provided scientific validation for ancient beliefs about sacred wooden objects accumulating spiritual power through repeated interaction. The practical applications of these findings proved equally transformative. Architectural firms began incorporating resonance design principles into building plans, strategically placing wooden elements in spaces where people naturally congregated or made important decisions. Healthcare facilities implemented bioresonant therapy, rooms featuring specially treated wood surfaces calibrated to maximize therapeutic effects. Educational institutions redesigned classrooms to include optimized wood interaction zones, resulting in measurable improvements in student focus and emotional well-being. Most profoundly, Eleanor's work revealed that humanity's relationship with wood represents a fundamental aspect of our species' consciousness. The act of knocking on wood isn't merely a superstition or cultural artifact. It's a manifestation of our deepest need to connect with the material world in meaningful ways. This insight forced a re-evaluation of how we understand human cognition, suggesting that our brains evolved to interpret specific environmental interactions as essential components of mental health and social cohesion. As the conference hall erupted in applause, Eleanor grasped the edge of the wooden lectern, feeling its familiar solidity beneath her fingers. She realized that her journey hadn't merely uncovered the origins of a simple gesture. It had revealed a universal truth about human existence. We knock on wood not because we fear bad luck, but because our very biology demands connection with the natural world's resonant frequencies. The act serves as a bridge between our conscious minds and the deeper truths of our evolutionary heritage, reminding us of our place within the grand ecological symphony of life. This understanding transformed the practice from a quaint superstition into a profound expression of human nature. Every knock on wood becomes a testament to our species' enduring quest for meaning, stability, and connection, a physical manifestation of our fundamental relationship with the universe's underlying order. Eleanor's research didn't just explain why we knock on wood, it revealed how this simple act connects us to the deepest truths of human consciousness and our place within the natural world. As Eleanor Whitmore concluded her monumental study, she found herself standing at the threshold of a profound realization. The act of knocking on wood transcends mere cultural artifact or historical curiosity. It represents nothing less than humanity's eternal conversation with the cosmos. Encoded in our very physiology, and expressed through an intimate dance with nature's most versatile material. The journey that began with a child's innocent question had transformed into a testament to human resilience, adaptation, and our unyielding need to find meaning in the physical world. Looking back across the centuries, from ancient Celtic groves to modern corporate boardrooms, the continuity of this practice speaks volumes about human nature. Each knock on wood serves as a temporal bookmark in our species' ongoing narrative, connecting us to countless generations who have sought comfort, protection, and affirmation through this universal gesture. What began as a sacred communion with nature evolved through religious syncretism, survived industrial revolution, and emerged in the digital age as a resilient thread in humanity's cultural tapestry. The true significance of wood knocking lies not in its ability to influence outcomes, though that belief persists, but in its power to anchor us in moments of uncertainty. Each contact with wood represents a microcosmic act of faith, a physical acknowledgement of our place within larger systems of meaning. Whether performed consciously or unconsciously, ritually or reflexively, the gesture bridges the gap between human intention and natural response, creating a momentary harmony between thought and matter. Modern society, despite its apparent detachment from natural materials, continues to crave these primal connections. The proliferation of wooden surfaces in contemporary architecture, the resurgence of handcrafted wooden objects, and the persistent popularity of wood-based rituals all speak to an unmet need that synthetic alternatives cannot satisfy. Our smartphones and smart homes may dominate our daily lives, but our fingers still seek the reassuring grain of wood during moments that matter. The future of this practice seems secure, not because of its mystical associations, but due to its fundamental alignment with human psychology. As urbanization accelerates and digital interfaces mediate more of our experiences, the need for tangible connections with natural materials will only intensify. Already, we see this manifesting in unexpected ways. Virtual reality experiences that simulate wood textures, biophilic design principles in workplace environments, and therapeutic applications of wood-based technologies. What makes knocking on wood truly remarkable is its ability to adapt while maintaining its essence. Like the rings of a tree marking each year's growth, the practice accumulates new meanings without losing its core significance. It serves as a reminder that human traditions are not static relics but living organisms, evolving to meet changing needs while preserving fundamental truths about our relationship with the world. As Eleanor prepared to publish her findings, she recognized that her work represented more than an academic achievement. It stood as proof that what appears superficial can conceal profound depth, that gestures dismissed as superstition may harbor ancient wisdom, and that humanity's connection to nature manifests in ways both subtle and significant. The act of knocking on wood endures because it satisfies a fundamental human need, not just for good luck, but for connection, for meaning, and for participation in something greater than ourselves. In the end, the legacy of this simple gesture extends far beyond its historical origins or cultural manifestations. It embodies humanity's perpetual search for equilibrium between progress and tradition, between technology and nature, between individual intention and collective experience. Each knock on wood creates a momentary unity between past and present, between human consciousness and natural law, between hope and action. It reminds us that even in our most modern moments, we remain fundamentally connected to the ancient forests from which our species emerged, and to the timeless rhythms that govern existence itself. The story of why we knock on wood is, ultimately, the story of humanity itself, a tale of adaptation, survival, and the enduring quest for meaning in a mysterious universe. It demonstrates that our most enduring traditions often contain kernels of profound truth, waiting to be rediscovered and appreciated anew. As Eleanor closed her final notebook, she realized that the true significance of her research lay not in answering a question, but in opening countless new avenues of understanding about what it means to be human. Eleanor's final reflections extended beyond the mere documentation of a cultural phenomenon. She understood that the act of knocking on wood, in its essence, mirrors the human condition itself, a blend of instinct, learned behavior, and subconscious patterning. It is not merely an action performed to ward off bad luck or invite good fortune. It is a ritualized expression of our deepest vulnerabilities and hopes. Each knock represents a moment when we pause, however briefly, to acknowledge the uncertainty of life, while simultaneously seeking control over it. This duality, acceptance and defiance, is what makes the gesture so enduring. As she traced her fingers along the edge of her oak desk one last time, Eleanor realized that the practice of knocking on wood also serves as a metaphor for how humanity interacts with the unknown. Just as wood resists and responds to our touch, so too does the universe present us with challenges that demand both humility and persistence. The sound of knuckles meeting wood is not just a physical act, but a symbolic dialogue between the self and the infinite. In this way, the tradition becomes less about superstition and more about philosophy, a quiet meditation on existence, chance, and agency. Her research had uncovered something even more profound. The universality of the gesture points to a shared human experience that transcends cultural boundaries. Whether in the forests of Scandinavia, the temples of Japan, or the marketplaces of Africa, people have found solace in the same material, wood, and expressed their fears and aspirations through similar actions. This global convergence suggests that there are fundamental truths about human nature that remain constant across time and space. Wood, with its unique properties of resilience, warmth, and resonance, has become a medium through which these truths are communicated, consciously or unconsciously. Yet, Eleanor also recognized the irony embedded within her findings. While modern science provides explanations for why humans gravitate toward wood knocking, the neural responses, the psychological benefits, the evolutionary underpinnings, it cannot fully capture the emotional weight of the act. There is something ineffable about the sensation of touching wood during moments of hope or dread. Something that defies quantification. Perhaps this is why the practice persists despite centuries of technological advancement and rational inquiry. It satisfies not only the mind but also the heart and spirit. Looking ahead, Eleanor envisioned a future where the understanding of such rituals could be applied in innovative ways. Imagine hospitals designed with resonant corridors lined with specially treated wood, offering patients a place to ground themselves amidst medical uncertainty. Picture classrooms equipped with interactive wooden panels that enhance focus and creativity among students. Envision urban spaces incorporating bioresonant materials into public infrastructure, creating environments that nurture mental well-being on a mass scale. These ideas were no longer flights of fancy. They were grounded in evidence and ripe for exploration. But beyond practical applications, Eleanor hoped her work would inspire a broader cultural shift. In an era dominated by digital interfaces and artificial constructs, the rediscovery of wood's significance might encourage society to reevaluate its relationship with the natural world. The tactile connection offered by wood reminds us of what we lose when we prioritize convenience over authenticity. By embracing traditions like knocking on wood not as relics of the past but as living practices, we affirm our commitment to preserving the delicate balance between progress and preservation. As night fell over her study, Eleanor took a moment to reflect on the journey that had brought her here. What began as a simple question from her grandson had blossomed into a lifelong pursuit, leading her down paths she never imagined. Along the way, she had encountered countless stories, each one adding depth and texture to the tapestry of human experience. She thought of the ancient Celts who whispered prayers to their sacred oaks, the Japanese artisans who carved intricate patterns into temple doors, and the African villagers who gathered beneath towering trees to perform synchronized knocks. Each story was a thread in the larger narrative of humanity's quest for meaning. And yet, the story was far from over. As cultures continue to evolve and new technology emerge, the act of knocking on wood will undoubtedly adapt once again. Perhaps future generations will develop entirely new variations of the practice, blending traditional elements with modern sensibilities. Or maybe the gesture will fade into obscurity, replaced by other forms of ritualized connection. Either way, its legacy will endure, encoded in the collective memory of humanity. With a final knock on her desk, half reflexive, half ceremonial, Eleanor closed her notebook and smiled. She knew that her work would not provide all the answers. Indeed, some questions are meant to linger, inviting further exploration. But she also knew that she had uncovered something extraordinary. Proof that even the smallest gestures can reveal the grandest truths about who we are and why we do what we do. In the end, the story of why we knock on wood is not just about wood at all. It is about connection between humans and nature, between past and present, between the seen and the unseen. It is about the ways in which we seek comfort, express hope, and navigate the uncertainties of life. And perhaps most importantly, it is about the enduring power of tradition to remind us of our shared humanity, binding us together across time and space in a universal language of wood and wonder.